They are standing guard over that roadwork. He came up and introduced himself as Faramir. The Count wants to talk to them. Into the city they ride. Fleetwood saved a bone. They all have tomb rot. They get their tomb rot cured. Where are horses sold? Where can I buy a horse? War horse, riding horse, draft horse, what you want. Somehow connects with Touchberry. Across the market square, they see looming the Count's palace. So he's got this great hall, in they go. At the far end, of course, is a dais, and there sits the Count. Sandor Clegane is standing there. I hear that you slew a dragon. Yes, you did. I hear you had a run-in with werewolves. Yes, we have. Here's your hat. What's your hurry? A scream, a screech down near the river. Weapons out, and they're running across the market to see what's going on. Lizard men. It was really just intended to be a sort of side thing. Fofire has found her groove as she's knocking out lizard man after lizard man. Oh, that would be quite a challenge. Someone has been following us. They start to get really freaked out. He turns away and just walks off. So they do a little shopping, and as the meal is wrapping up, Faramir returns through the market square to the Count's palace. I require messengers. Ah, werebears. This scroll case is magically sealed. You must carry this message to the Earthsign tribe. Farewell. Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to The Dungeon Master! So, our heroes are heading south. I have to get to work on the map really quick. They are going off of the map that I had so far developed. I had bottomed out at Kilmarnock. I hadn't gone any further south, but I had implied that there was a great deal further south because Kilmarnock was known as the Reach, the furthest north that the kingdom of Strath Unwin went. So there must be quite a bit of kingdom to the south. So I had some work ahead of me. The next section south of there would be another lord. It's a feudal system in which lords govern, and ladies, govern the land on behalf of the king, and they are vassals of the king. So, who is south of Count Kilmarnock? They are traveling into the territory of Lord Roban, Baron of Comoic, which occupies a territory known as the Riverlands. Now, yes, Riverlands was in Game of Thrones, but I don't think it's such a unique term that George R.R. Martin can claim ownership of it, okay? The Riverlands are where a number of northern rivers converge and join the Unwin. The Unwin River is the major river for the kingdom. The kingdom takes its name from that river, the kingdom of Strath Unwin. Strath Unwin means the valley of the Unwin. Unwin also means bear, so just keep that in mind. It comes into the story in a number of ways. But the valley of the Unwin. And so the Strath Unwin kingdom really is this kingdom that lies in a valley, mostly within the valley, a bit stick out here or there, but mostly within the valley of the Unwin River. Now, it's a very broad valley. This isn't a small thing. It's a very, very wide valley, so it's a lot of territory. Anyhow, enough preface. I always put in too much preface. I like to preface my prefaces by telling you that I'm going to preface my preface. It's, enough. Okay, so our heroes have just left Count Kilmarnock. Oh, right. I do need to let you know one other thing. The characters have picked up the bone that has been carved into a sword. That was finished. They did pick it up, and Touchberry has his sword back. That's gonna be important. They also spent some time buying jewels so that when they get back to Kilmarnock, they can take the finished bone sword, have it sharpened, and have a hilt made for it inlaid with black and yellow gems to give as a gift to the Count, right? Because black and yellow, again, his colors, his livery. All right, enough. They are heading out into the night, accompanied by Sandor Clegane, the right-hand man of the Count. As they leave the Count's palace, he asks them, "Do you want to travel by road or by river?" Road or river. They've just bought horses, so it might be tempting to go by road. On the other hand, might be faster by river and less risk to them, because if the boat gets smashed up, it's not their boat, right? So, they decide to go by river. Very good. Come. And he takes them down to the river. Shall we gather at the river? He takes them down to the river, and they find there a launch, a boat, all prepared. They load into the boat, Clegane casts off, and down the river they go silently, in the dark. Remember, there's not streetlights, right? There's no illumination whatsoever, so it's just stars and moon, and the moon is half covered, and it's only about a quarter full anyway, so it's not that bright out. They slide silently through the city. As they approach the South River Gate, Clegane whistles a code, a sort of three-tone code whistle, which is repeated from the darkness, the looming darkness of the gate ahead of them. A moment later, there is a clanking and a clattering as chains tighten and the portcullis rises. Just enough. In fact, passengers have to duck down to slide under the dark mass of the iron portcullis, which lowers behind them as they slide away. They travel in total silence until the last of Kilmarnock's buildings are well behind them. Then, Clegane speaks up. I will travel with you as far as the Baron's lands. When we come to his borders, I will leave you. I cannot be seen in your company, or this mission will be for nothing. Sail down the Unwin until you reach Camoec. There the Shire River joins it from the northwest. You'll have to sail up the Shire River. There is a sail in the boat for that. You'll have to sail up the Shire River until you come to a creek, a stream which joins it just below the logging town of Woodburn. The stream is called the Arcus. Legend has it that the Earthsign tribe lives in the vicinity of the source of that stream, although no one has ever found it, at least no one who's lived to tell the tale. I'm sure you'll be fine. Okay, this is getting more and more mysterious. They sail the rest of the night in near silence. The only talking is for practical things. Push off from the bank there, help me steer, that kind of stuff. Hand me that rope, whatever you say when you're in a boat. I don't know, I don't go boating. But anyway, mostly in silence. In fact, the adventurers at some point or another doze off in the boat, and Clegane steers alone. By the time they wake up, it is dawn. Clegane shakes them awake, actually, and he says, "The boat is yours now. I must leave you. Ahead there is a bridge. It marks the entrance to the Baron's lands. Good luck." And without another word, he simply rolls off the back of the boat, sploosh, into the river, and he wades ashore into the long grasses and the scrub brush on the side of the river, and he's gone. What in the world? Oh, the boat's ours. Oh, heck. Let's steer, because they're heading for this bridge, right? Now, it's a ways ahead of them. They can see it in the far distance, but oh, okay, he's gone. We're about to enter the Baron's lands. Now, one of the pieces of information that Clegane had communicated to them during their brief conversations during the night was that in this boat, under the seats and in the cargo compartments, there is cargo for them so that they can pretend to be merchants, so they can pretend to be selling goods. So they pop one of those open now to see what it is they're supposed to be selling, and it's onions. It's onions because it's a running joke that Bob Johnny always eats the onions. You know, when the kobolds have a barrel of onions set aside in their kitchens, he's eating those. When the gnolls have an old crate of onions sitting around, he starts eating the onions. So for the rest of the trip that day, he's eating onions. You know, he's popping onions in right, left, and center. His breath stinks, and they're all in this little boat together, so it's a little unpleasant, but you know, what's what you gotta do. So he's eating onions, and on they go. The rest of the day is perfectly peaceful. They're just sliding down the river. The only steering they need to do is to keep themselves away from obstacles and things like that. You know, the occasional rock or keeping off of the banks, that kind of thing. So it's pretty easy. It's actually not long into the day before they see a village approaching. I mean, they're approaching the village. The village is standing still. Well, I mean, the Earth is rotating and the village is on the Earth, so in a sense the village is moving at an extraordinarily high rate of speed, They approach a village. It is on the west bank, and they see it coming. It's not really time to stop. It's not the evening yet, but they're exhausted. They did not get very good sleep in the boat the night previous, and they're really tired, so they want to rest, right? And, you know, the boat stinks because Bob Johnny's on like his 10th onion, and it's really starting to reek. So they decide, you know, we're gonna pull off here. Pull off? Do you do that on the river? We're going to dock here and see if they have an inn. We could have a nice meal, and we'll stay there for the rest of this day and the night. So as they approach the village, they steer themselves over to the west bank, and they pull up to the dock and lash on. As they do so, a man comes down the pier. He looks to be a villager, but he's carrying a spear. He doesn't look terribly comfortable with it, but he's got a spear, and he's got a really rusty old helmet on his head. He comes down and says, "Who goes there? In the name of the Baron, who goes there? I need your names if you're going to dock here. I need your names and 1 silver piece. 1 silver piece, and you have to give me your names." And this is where my boys try to pull the bit from Pirates of the Caribbean, right? It'll be 1 silver piece to dock, and I need your names. How about 10 silver pieces, and you forget my name, right? Okay, doesn't work. And he wants to know what they're doing. They say, "Well, we're bringing onions. We're bringing onions to trade." "Onions? Why would you bring onions? Here we grow our own onions. We don't need your onions." "I don't know. Onions? What a strange thing to bring." He's fussing about that, and they say, "Is there an inn that we could stay at? We're very tired. We need some rest. Is there a good inn that you might have?" "Well, the Babblebrook Inn. You could go to the Babblebrook Inn. They have good food and rooms to let, if that's what you're after." "Yes, I'd go there." "Okay." Onions. So they leave him fussing about the onions, and they seek out the Babblebrook Inn, which proves to be a very small, cozy, comfortable little inn where they find a meal and someplace to sleep. And that's where they spend the rest of that day and that evening. The next morning, after an ample breakfast, at least on Touchberry's part, after breakfast, they head back to the dock to get back into the boat to continue their journey down the Unwin, which has another day or 2 before they even reach the Shire River. Arriving at the dock, they notice something. Their boat has been searched. Nothing is where they left it. The compartments for cargo, some of them are open, they're ajar. Someone has been searching the boat, looking for something. They apparently did not find it. No onions were stolen or anything like that. But this puts everyone on edge. Into the boat they go, they seal everything up again, they put it all to rights, and down the river. The day's travel is uneventful. This is well-cultivated, populated land. As they go all along, they see little hamlets here and there, farmsteads and whatnot. The villages are marked on the map. Those are the larger centers of population, but there are lots and lots of little tiny places all around. So there's not many encounters of anything worth note. We role play a couple of times where they pass another boat or they see someone on the shore who calls to them, but it's nothing important. There's nothing earth-shattering about any of it. It's mostly just for color. The nights are another thing altogether. I mean the time when the sun is down, not guys in armor with lances. The nights are another thing altogether. Anything wild that's going to come out comes out at night. Now, they spend their first night within sight of another bridge. They have reached another bridge that crosses the Unwin. This one leads to the Baron's seat, his castle city, the capital of this area. It is the city and the castle of Comoic, which sits at the confluence of the Unwin and the Shire rivers. By sunset, the elves in particular can make out that bridge. It's still in the far distance, but they can make it out. And they decide they want to go off to the side and camp before they get too close to the city. So they go to the western bank. They find a nice flat space where they can camp down near the river, a little lower than the fields. The fields are up here, then there's sort of a drop down to the river. They want to camp down there, so they look for an area where there's an open space. That's where they make camp. As they always do, they set a watch, and it is during Bob Johnny's watch in the middle of the night when, well, there he sits, minding his own business, when suddenly, wham! Something slams into him and he's bowled over. This huge, heavy, wet, rubbery something has landed on him. What on earth is that smell? It's not a troglodyte. No, it's a giant toad. And the smell, well, you know what toads do when you pick them up, right? Well, it's done that. All over Bob Johnny. At any rate, this huge toad has leapt on him. This thing has actually been there since they made camp, laying low, and because it's a toad, it's got that kind of stony feature, they just thought it was a big rock. They didn't even look at it twice. They didn't even think about it. It was getting dark anyway. They weren't paying a lot of attention to it. They didn't look at it. And so this thing has leaped out, slammed into Bob Johnny, and now he's got a toad on him trying to bite him. This combat doesn't take too long. A giant toad isn't a real serious opponent for some 4th level elves and a 5th level halfling and a 6th level thief. It's nothing. So it doesn't last very long, but it puts them on edge. Like, what happened? They don't end up killing the toad, actually. They injure it. I roll a morale check. The toad fails, and the toad goes hopping off in fear to hide someplace, right? Okay. Oh, Bob Johnny. The onions were bad enough. Rinse yourself off or something. Ugh. All right. Rest of that night is fine. The next day, they awake, and again, the elves can see the bridge, and they begin sailing further down. Eventually, everyone can see the bridge approaching. As they go under it, they notice that huddled under the bridge on either side, in those spaces, there are encampments of people. Now, poverty of this nature, homelessness, was not something they saw in Kilmarnock. It just didn't have a public face. Like, there were people who were less well off, but this kind of poverty and this many people is not something they experienced in Kilmarnock. So it shocks them a little bit. They sail through and under and out below the towering walls of the castle. Here the land rises up in a large rock, right where the 2 rivers come together. This rock stands in a promontory, and the castle on top of that. And so they begin to sail past the city walls and the walls of the castle. They go past. Now, they can see guards up on the wall. There's not many of them. This is not a marchland. Kilmarnock is north of here, providing protection. But they do have a watch out, primarily because the lizardmen have been passing through recently, driven south by the armies of the Count and of the Baron and of others who are just trying to get them out of the kingdom. They'd had some trouble with lizardmen, so there are guards on the wall, and they note the boat. They can see that they've been seen, and as they get to the confluence with the Shire River, the water starts flowing faster. Now this is where they're supposed to make the turn and head up the Shire River to the northwest, but they can't manage the current here. It's going too swiftly, and I say, everyone, roll a d20. Give me a dexterity check. And most of them make it. Most of them. Not Touchberry. Wah! Off he goes into the water. And there's this desperate moment where they're trying to rescue Touchberry, who's wearing chainmail armor, so this is not great. They're trying to rescue him and right the boat. They haul the halfling into the boat just before they run aground. And they get oars in, poles in, and start trying to turn themselves around. Finally, they remember, we've got the sail, and they put that up. And they find a way to catch the right wind going in the right direction, and it begins to carry them up. They've got to do some tacking a little bit up. But once they're out of the confluence of the 2, the Shire River is much smaller and more gentle, and so it doesn't become a real big problem. They're able to, between paddling and what the sail can catch, they're able to get themselves up the river. But they hear laughing from the guards on the wall. And in that moment, they decide they do not like the Baron's men. They do not like them at all. Now, the going is slower because, of course, they're going upstream, but they do make some progress before it's getting dark and they need to camp. And they choose a spot on the east bank this time and find a nice grassy area where they can pull the boat out and make camp. So they do. They have an evening meal and turn in, setting a watch, of course. It is during Faux-Fire's watch, which I think is the 3rd of the night, when something happens. She's sitting there tending the fire and keeping watch when she hears a noise, a slight rustling. Now, I've done this to them before where there's a small noise and it turns out to be a raccoon or something. So she doesn't wake everyone up immediately, but she listens. Nothing more. It's very quiet. Unnaturally quiet. A lot of the wildlife, the sort of things that titter and moan and screech and whatnot in the night, they've gone quiet. There's nothing. So Fofire is on high alert. And she's looking with all her eyes, trying to see something, but it is just dark. All she sees is dark. Boom! Again! Pounced on out of the dark, this time by a panther. I had rolled up a random encounter, came up with a panther, and I thought, ooh, that's a good one, because, they're black, it's night. Very cool. Jumps at her out of the dark, and there's a pretty serious fight this time, because a panther, for the most part, is not a giant toad. You'll find if you look at them closely, they're two different things. Anyway, big fight happens. The noise of the attack and her, shouting and everything wakes up the rest. Fight on. Again, they don't end up killing it. Again, I'm rolling morale for this thing. So it runs away into the night. And they've chased the thing off without killing it, which makes them happy. Especially my middle guy, Touchberry. He's a bit of a soft touch for the animals. So he's happy they didn't have to kill it. Off it goes. And they calm back down, give Fofire some tea. You all right? Okay. And they set the watch again and finish out the night without any more incident. The next morning sees them up again, back in the boat, making their slow way up the Shire River, looking for this stream which joins the Shire River from the west, and for the village of Woodburn, which will confirm for them that this is indeed the stream. Because there are little tributary streams and creeks and whatnot, coming in from every side all over the place, right? These are the riverlands. It's a very watered area. So they're not sure. They'll see a creek, like, is that it? Yeah, it doesn't look navigable. And we were told we'd be able to sail up it. I don't know. I don't see a village around here. So when they do see a stream that is navigable and looks like a likely candidate, they keep going up the Shire River because they know that Woodburn will be shortly after it. And indeed, they see it. They see the village there, perched at the river and hugging the woods. This is a logging town. Now, my foresters, much like medieval foresters, are very environmentally conscious. They know that you don't just cut all the trees down because that's a waste, right? You manage a forest. This is something we used to know. And in my world, they still do. So this has been there for a while, this logging town of Woodburn. Having seen that, they now know that the stream they left is probably the right one. So they make an about-face, go down the river a bit, the Shire River, and into the stream. This, again, is going upstream, but now it's a stream, it's a smaller current, it's not much to fight, and they can actually pole, they can actually reach the bottom in places with their paddles. So up they go for a ways, and they decide to pull the boat out and head into Woodburn because it's getting toward night again and they want to rest. They don't feel like camping a third time and risking yet another thing jumping at them out of the night. So they hide the boat. Fleetwood in particular is very concerned about covering the boat up and hiding it, and into the village they go. There they find a very rough and tumble sort of inn and pub, which they retire to, have a meal, and listen in on some of the gossip. Most of it is, work stuff about, this many logs, and I had a hard time up there. It was log we cut down, it got wedged in some other trees, and it didn't come down, we had to shake it out. That kind of stuff that you talk about. But they do hear, mentioned here and there, the word earthsign. These people live close by the earthsign tribe, and there's a constant presence, a worry out there. There seems to be mistrust in the way they talk about the earthsigns, and so the characters ask some questions. I heard you talking about the earthsigns. Who are the earthsigns? Oh, earthsigns, those bear people. There's all legends and they turn into bears. That's not real, It's a bunch of hooey. They're just wild men up in the woods. Don't want to pay taxes. That's why they live there. While others, the old-timers, say, no, it's real. Them bears, they're real. Frightening. So they get a sense of the relationship between the village and the earthsigns and what it is they're about to walk into. They do spend the night at this inn, and I pull something actually out of Horror on the Hill, where if you stay, there's an inn there, and if you stay there, there's a chance that you'll get fleas. It doesn't affect you, it doesn't do any damage, it's just sort of a thing for interest and for humor. So I include that, and Fleetwood gets fleas. He's always getting that kind of stuff, and I think Fofire as well. Fleetwood and Fofire both end up with fleas. Just something fun. Anyhow, the next day they have a morning meal and they head back to where their boat was. They find it and they find that it's still intact and hidden, and decide they're going to leave it there. The stream is really too shallow to navigate by boat. They're just going to follow it up on foot. So into the woods they go. Now, of course, they're following the stream. They know that the earthsigns live at the head, the source of this stream, so they're going to stick to the stream. They're going to cleave close to it. And as they're going, I'm rolling for random encounters. And an hour or two in, one happens. And I say, you're making your way along, and there's a rustling up ahead of you, up to your right. It's crashing off in the brush somewhere. It seems like it's getting closer. It's the occasional smash and crash. Nothing too big, nothing to be worried about really, but you can hear something coming. I say, okay, well, does it seem like it's coming toward us? Yeah, it seems like it might be coming in your... It stops. It stops, like every sound stopped, as if the creature saw you or smelled you. Then, crash! It's coming. Now it's coming hard. It's coming fast. This is something big, and it's coming at you fast out of the woods. So there are weapons out and ready, and then, bursting into a clearing ahead, you can see it just for a moment as it crosses between some trees. You see it is a wild boar. Now, Bob Johnny is ready. He does not need to be reminded. He needs no prompting. He says, "Ring of animal control," and away the wild boar trots. Okay? I like to throw these things in there. Now, this was the legitimate random encounter that I rolled up. Oh, wild boar, okay. But I love it when those happen because it reminds him that he has that ring. Because I want him to remember it because there's something important that I want to do with this ring eventually. For now, wild boar avoided, they continue up the path. Eventually, they come to a clearing, and they've been following this stream as it wends its way between ground that is becoming increasingly hilly. As it rises and falls, the stream, of course, is finding the lowest path. But they come to a place where ahead of them, they see a couple of things. First of all, a clearing. There's more light ahead, and eventually they come to a place where they can see, indeed, there's a large open clearing created by a pond. They can see the sunlight glimmering off of its surface. A large pond in the forest, and behind that, looming the side of one of these hills, which are getting bigger and bigger. They're in the foothills of this western spur of mountain. And so as they get closer, of course, the foothills are becoming more and more dramatic. And here, one has a sheer cliff face. And it is from that cliff that the stream is issuing and creating a pond. Now, something immediately grabs their attention. At the place where the stream leaves this cliff face, it comes out of a cave in the side of the cliff. At that spot, carved into the cliff itself, sort of a Mount Rushmore kind of thing, carved into the cliff itself is an enormous stone statue of a bear. And it is from between the bear's legs, down around its feet, that the stream flows out, and its legs form the entrance to this cave. That is the most astonishing thing, obviously the most visually arresting, and they're staring at that. When I say you also notice, around the edges of the pond, there are huge boulders, and they look like they've been placed there intentionally. They wouldn't just naturally gather around a pond. They wouldn't just fall there. They've been placed there almost as if it's a ceremonial place, almost as if these are seats. And in fact, seated on one of those boulders, one of those that flanks where the stream leaves the pond, seated up there are two people. I say people. They're massive. They're probably 7 feet tall at the least. Big, broad, strong looking. A man and a woman. As the PCs approach, they stand and turn. Both of them have shocks of black hair. The man an enormous beard. They're both dressed in deer skins. The man has a huge double-bladed battle axe hanging off his back. The woman has a mace, an enormous mace, hanging from her belt. And they look down at the PCs as if they expected them, as if they could hear them or smell them coming. The man looks at them, looks at his wife, and they sort of share a knowing smile, and he looks back and says,
"Greetings! Welcome, travelers. Who are you and what business do you have here?"
Okay. And so around the table now there's a quick talk. Whoa, what do we do? What do we say? Do we tell them why we're here? What do we do? Finally they decide, yeah, we have to tell them. We're supposed to read this message to the full gathering, whatever that means. That can't possibly be 2 people, so we have to tell them that we have a message so they can gather the gathering, right? So they're wondering about this, and it's taking a while around the table to talk this out, and so the woman speaks. "Do not be afraid. We will not harm you, unless you deserve it." And sort of put a chill into them. So they speak up. "We have a message. We bring a message from Lord Cormac, Count of Kilmarnock." The couple look at each other. They turn back.
"Very well,"
says the man.
"My name is Orso."
And the woman says, "I am Callisto. We are of the Earthsign tribe. This is intriguing indeed. I feel we should call the gathering." Orso looks.
"Truly?"
"Yes, we should call the gathering."
"Very well. I will summon them. It's going to take some time, though."
And the PC's like, "Okay, how long?" Callisto says, "It will take days to gather the full tribe. They are far flung." "Okay, well, we'll camp here, I guess."
"No, you won't. You won't camp this close to the sacred pond. I will take you to a place."
He leaps down off of the rock, followed by Callisto, and they walk up, and this is when they really get a sense of how really big these people are, and they stride past them, and Callisto says, "Follow us." And so they do, into the woods. There's no discernible path, but Callisto and Orso seem to know precisely where they're going. They wend their way between trees, and as they go, the PCs notice that, yeah, the going is a little easier here. There are no dead logs here. The underbrush seems to be a little clearer. You wouldn't know it to look, but there is a path. Eventually that path leads to a cabin in the woods. Okay, I am stealing wildly from the Bjorn scenes in The Hobbit. Sue me. No, really, don't sue me, please. At any rate, they bring them to this cabin in the midst of the woods. It's a rough structure, but it's at least a structure. Orso opens the door and says,
"You may stay here. We will bring you bedding and food. Do not leave the area of the cabin. You may walk in the woods, but always keep the cabin in sight. I cannot answer if you leave this area."
And they're left there. Okay. Now they actually end up spending 3 days there. And we don't roleplay the whole thing. I do ask them, well, what do you do with your time? They find in the cabin, they find a game, like, equivalent to chess or checkers or something like that. So they play that. And, they walk in the woods and practice throwing daggers at trees, working on their aim, that kind of thing. Something to pass the time. Finally, the morning of the 3rd day, Orso returns and says, "Come." Okay, and off they go. Orso is alone. He leads the PCs back along that path toward the sacred pond. When they get there, he takes them around the edge, around all that line of boulders, to the cliff where the bear statue is carved. There, where the cliff meets the water, there's a ledge that runs along the edge of the pond, and it has in itself some boulders here and there that look, again, like seats. These are higher up, perhaps for the ones who are leading whatever gathering happens here at the pond. But he's ignoring the pond and taking them to that cave. In he goes, and so the PCs are like, well, I guess we go in after him. They walk in. They have to wade through the stream. It's only a couple feet deep here. Touchberry has a little trouble, but it's not bad. They have to wade in, and it opens out. The stream is coming off from one side, but the cavern opens to the other. This cavern is immense, 20, 30 feet high, and the sides of it slowly slope up to form a bit of a bowl. And on the edges of that bowl, perched here and there on ledges that have been cut into the stone, large stones that are sticking up from it, seated at various places are men and bears. And some creatures that look a little like a combination of man and bear, somewhere in between. These are the earthsigns, the werebears. Some of them are in human form, some of them are in bear form, and then they've also just brought some bears along. You know, like you'd take your dog to the park, they've got a bear they take with them. They're friends, right? As the PCs walk in, there's a murmur throughout the cave of low and deep and strong voices. There is an air of mistrust in the cave. The gathering is a sacred thing. It is the mind of the tribe together where they make their most important decisions. And so a couple of elves and a halfling and a human walking into the midst of it is a really big deal. It doesn't happen very often. A murmur, as I say, goes around the room. And suddenly there is this growling sound, and an enormous werebear, half human, half bear, kind of, mid-stage, stands up from he's got a large ledge of rock that he was sitting on. He stands up and bellows out this growling, roaring voice. And then he begins to speak.
For the sake of our guests, I will speak in their tongue. We have messengers here from a great lord of men, Cormac, Count of Kilmarnock.
Again, the murmur around the room and voices here and there. Why should we hear from a lord of men?
I don't want to hear anything from men.
Then another large man stands up, fully human form. Large man stands up, going on like 7.5 to 8 feet tall, this guy. Huge, broad man. He stands up and he says,
There is a message for us from a lord of men. Would we hear it or no, it has been brought to us. We have gathered. I would hear the words of Cormac. What I know of him, he is a good man. Let us hear his messengers.
This is clearly a well-respected individual because suddenly there's a change in the tone.
All right then. Fine, we'll hear them.
And you can hear a sort of murmur of assent as it calms down. The boiling point lowers here, and it becomes quiet. The large werebear says,
Speak, guests.
Okay. So Fleetwood has the scroll. Fleetwood is the one who has to stand forward, and he steps up now. He opens the scroll, and as he does, he can feel a warmth radiate into his hands. The seal is broken. He now has 10 minutes to read this. If he needs to reread it, 3 times through, 4 times through, he has 10 minutes from the breaking of that seal. He knows it. So he pulls it out and begins to read. Ursine lords and ladies, I send my greetings to you, and my hand in friendship. The messengers who carry this scroll are brave and trustworthy, and I ask that you trust them as my own emissaries. Perhaps you have heard of troubles in human lands, in the kingdom that shares your name. The lizard men, driven south by the cold, have harried and attacked our lands. This, in itself, is surmountable. We have the strength and the power to repel them. However, King Fergus has used this chaos to move, and he is set to change our ancient custom of electing our kings. With his wife, Lady Morgan, he seeks to place their son Donal on the throne. Clerics of the Way have been bribed, threatened, and cajoled into supporting this, and my fellow lords are stirring for war. The king has mighty allies, however, including your ancient foes, the werewolves. Ivalio is on the move, and has made small feints to test our strength. My messengers have helped stop him, but these have been mere skirmishes. He is gathering strength, hoping to assist the king, and then assert his ancient claim once men are weak. The king refuses to see this. I fear his mind is clouded by some dark power. I reach out to you now. Will you ally yourselves to men to stop this evil? These messengers are messengers only. They cannot treat with you, but can carry your reply. Your sincere friend, Cormac, Count Kilmarnock. There's silence in the gathering. There's also silence at our table. It was really cool because suddenly, the whole world opened up at their feet, right? What they had always assumed, yeah, there's a kingdom to the south, the Count, he's a powerful guy, good guy, and all that. Everything now is in question. Is the king actually plotting, or is Cormac just stirring up war? Is Ivalio actually that powerful, or is he a paper wolf? We've defeated him before. The clerics of the way, that's the name of the religion in this area, the clerics of the way are bribed. How many of them can be trusted? Who can be trusted? Everything opens up, right? And the fact that they have been told to keep their mission secret as they make their way through the barony of Comoic indicates that perhaps Baron Roban is opposed to Lord Cormac, that there is a rivalry, perhaps even potentially a conflict brewing between these two great northern territories. So the players are like, whoa, okay. With varying degrees of understanding of the nature of and complexity of the situation, but still, they're all like, whoa, okay. So is the chamber. There is silence. Then begins a comment here, a comment there, and the place erupts into voices, all shouting at each other, all talking at the same time. Some you can hear crying for war. The werewolves, we must destroy them. Others say, it's none of our business, we stay out of the affairs of men. No, we will not go near this. Finally, the big Ursine stands up again and bellows,
Silence!
And the room goes quiet.
We will discuss this amongst ourselves. Messengers, you are excused. Also, Callisto, take them back to your cabin.
PCs thank the Ursines for hearing them. It's about this time the scroll and the case just disintegrate in Fleetwood's hands. They bow, and they make their way back out. They're led back to the cabin, where Orso says,
Wait here. I will return as soon as we have word of the mind of the gathering.
And he closes the door on them.
The bears.